Hopefully all is right and ready. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, beautiful souls. Welcome to my channel. My name is Sadhana, and I'm here today to share with you some decks and to talk a little bit about decks that are a little more challenging and how I work with them and why I might recommend them. And I will switch my screen in just a second so you can see cards face down as well too. I'm going to just open a new window so I can see the chat, and then we'll be good to go. So how are you? Happy Sunday afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Monday for some of you, I suppose. So let me know where you are, how you are, and all of that as well too. So hello, I see Andrew's here, and Marg, and Jen. Excellent. Okay. So I'm thinking that I would like to come on regularly on Sundays. I've just had, hello, Sacred Turtle. I've just been wanting to, I don't know, share more and talk more. I find that I learn so much from sharing. And the more I share my cards and talk about cards, the more I learn about reading myself. You know, there's just something to this. And I love to exercise my decks. You know, if I don't go on YouTube or I don't go into the shop, I mean, I do readings with people, but when I'm doing readings, it's so different. I just love to have the cards in my hand, you know, and look at the pictures and reflect and chat and all of that. So welcome, Alana. Thanks for joining. So that's what we're going to do today. And I want you to know that these decks are in no particular order as far as challenging. These are just 10 decks or so that I have chosen today that do kind of have a different qualities to them. They're definitely not beginner decks, and I'm going to share with you different ways I have worked with them. I've worked with all of the ones that I'm sharing with you today. Some of them more than others, and some of them I'm actually revisiting, working on them. And so yes, I'm just going to go through. And I did get your email, Andrew. Sorry, I haven't replied. And so I really appreciate that. I will get to that. I was teaching a class today, different things, and I know I should have replied sooner. So I will get back to you very, very soon. Thank you for reminding me. All right. And I need to just kind of get these. So we're going to start with the Shimonet Tarot. This is a deck by Eden Gallanter that I know a lot of people find very challenging, including me. And I have purchased a second copy of this deck. And I just need to see where we're at here as far as, oh my goodness, this is going to be challenging working in half a screen, but that's okay. I'm going to do my best. So this is a self-published deck called the Shimonet Tarot. Do I have the box handy? I have a lot of cards on my table. I will put them in the description box later. It's Chimonet. Eden is on the West Coast in the US. This deck came out some years ago. And it is a deep deck. What I am doing right now, and I started to share with you, I purchased a second, I have the guidebook here, yay. So you can see the title. There we go. The Shimonet Tarot. And I always wanted to trim this deck. And so I purchased a second copy. And very slowly, I'm going through and revisiting the deck and trimming it and really taking my time to get to know this deck again. So this is what it looks like trimmed with a medium corner rounder. And my more loved version is here. And so what I wanted to share with you is one of the things I like about this deck. And one of the reasons why it is more challenging is that there are stories woven within stories. And the 3 cards you're looking at right now, we have the priestess, whose body is basically dissected here. This stone at the back here represents her ribs. Sorry, these are her ribs. This is her spine. This is her blood. This is looking at her in from a wider perspective. But what I wanted to share with you was that I should have my little pointer, which I don't. This, the High Priestess here in the priest card is here at the foot of the priest. And as Eden tells the story of this deck, she weaves in people, in characters, in stories throughout the cards. So the priestess appears in the priest card, and here in the death card, this is the priest as a. Yes, thank you, Neem. I'll be very careful not to write on my cards. Maybe I should put the cap on. This is the priest here. This is the priest here in the arms of death. And it is so intriguing. I talked a little bit about this deck at the very end of my beginner tarot card video that I did not too long ago. And my suggestion was that if you can really be brave enough to take your time with a deck and to begin to unravel it card by card, you can start to really learn something about the tarot. Neem having anxiety, that's funny. Okay, so this is one of my favorite cards in this deck. This is, maybe I should hold it up for you. Can you see this? This is the 8 of Swords. And the story goes that this is the King of Swords. And hopefully you're not looking at my arrow there. I don't know if you are. So here's the King of Swords here. And so what she cleverly does in this deck is she brings in all of the characters in multiple ways throughout the suits. And it's not just the King of Swords appearing in the suit of, yes, actually it is. It is in the suit of swords. And so it all kind of makes sense in a very complicated way. And so if you're looking for a deck to really challenge you, it's really quite something. Here are all of the 6s. And one of the things Eden talks about is the harmony and the balance of the 6s. And so another thing I'm kind of working on with this deck is to really reflect on the relationship between the Lovers card and all of the 6s. So, and sometimes that's something that I forget to do. I know that, we all kind of know that when we're looking at a 6 in a minor suit, there is a connection to the Lovers card, but I'm really trying to do that. And you can see here how she's brought in the balance, the harmony and the balance. So every single one of the 6s reflects this balance and this harmony. It's really kind of cool. So I'm just looking at the chat. The other thing, so here's one more for this deck. So this is really, and also there's like stories within stories, like I said. And so here is the 5 of Discs. And we have the king and queen of discs sitting in these trees. And then when we get to the 6 of discs, we have the same trees, but the king and queen are no longer there. And then the story goes on. So it's just really, it's a very, very clever deck. And people have asked me questions about it a lot because I have mentioned it on my channel a few times. And so that's one of the reasons I went back to get the second copy, because I really needed to take my time and to start to visit it again. So yeah, so you guys all know this deck. And this is the Bonefire. For those of you that don't know it, it is definitely an older deck. I'm just drawing a blank at the creator's name. Oh my goodness, I should know it. It's Gabby, I think, right? Yes, Gabby Angus West. And in this book, she talks about, in her guidebook, she talks about this deck as a beginner's deck and how she wanted to make this deck not for woo-woo people. She wanted to make this deck completely accessible to anybody who wasn't into the new age crowd. And I find that really funny, actually. I kind of get it, but there is so much going on in this deck. And I wanted to, one of the reasons this deck is not on my rack is because I haven't trimmed it. And on my wish list is a very expensive guillotine cutter. Because of the black edge, it's nearly impossible to trim this deck. So one of the things, okay, so here's your yogi nerd here looking at this deck. So can you see over on the right, there is the heart chakra lotus, right here. Let me see the back of the card. This one? Is that what you mean, Neem? And so as I was revisiting this deck, I was thinking, whoa, I didn't even realize there were chakra symbols on these cards. And so I went through the whole deck trying to find all of the cards with the chakra symbols, and there are not. She's only included some of the chakra symbols in the deck, and we have the root chakra. Now this one is kind of bizarre because the lotus has way too many petals on it, but I guess that's neither here nor there. Only us yogi nerds would have issue with that. She still has the square and the almost correct symbol. And then she also has the root chakra symbol on the Chariot card, which to me is really, really interesting. So I wanted to see if there were borders on the back to help you trim. Oh yeah, no such luck with that. It would have to be very carefully measured to trim. Oh, okay. And then here's another thing with this deck. So here we have Cancer, right? Cancer being associated with the Chariot. But we don't have the astrological symbols on all 12 of the sun signs, just on some of them. So I find that this deck, it's like Gabby picked and chose the symbols that she wanted to include. So we don't have all of the astrological symbols. We don't have all of the chakra symbols. I'm just going to go up closer here. So on the Hierophant, which is really kind of cool, we have the throat chakra symbol, which is, I don't know, what do you think of that, having the throat chakra symbol on the Hierophant card? And Gabby doesn't really talk about the symbols in the book. I mean, the book is really clever and really funny. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Bakara Whitner's book. the whole tongue-in-cheek thing. But yeah, so it's been really fun to kind of go back, and I can't wait one day to actually trim this deck and have it on my shelf. The other really fun thing on this deck to do is to find all of the green eyes, because there's green eyes on a lot of the cards. And if you take out all the cards with the green eyes and kind of look at them and look across the green-eyed cards and try to make sense of that. The other thing that I found and I pulled out just for you guys is the Philosopher's Stone symbol right here. And the Philosopher's Stone symbol appears on about 4 cards. This is one of them. This is the Hanged Man, which also has the trident. So I don't think this is a beginner's deck. I really don't. I mean, what do you guys think? Jens doesn't like the book for this one. So this one also has that symbol up there, as does I think the Ace of Wands does too. Oh, okay. So here's the thing that I really like about this deck. I love that she talks about the pineal gland and the pine cones being connected to the pineal gland. The only thing that doesn't really resonate with me, so the pineal gland being the gland in the center of the brain that activates the Agnya chakra, the third eye chakra. If I was using that as a symbol, I might shift this to, I don't know, the suit of swords. The pineal gland in yogic teachings is connected to all of the elements. And so she chose to connect the pineal gland to the suit of fire, which, I don't know. I like that she included the pineal gland in the deck, but the associations are a bit of a stretch for me. Yeah. So this is why I think this is definitely a deck for reflection, for it's a great deck, right? For journaling and thinking deeper and kind of diving into some other things. I've also mentioned that this is I don't know what you have, if you see this as a queer deck, but I see a lot of diversity in this deck as far as gender goes, which is awesome. Yeah, I love this 8 of Coins. I really do. And there's just so much happening in these cards. The other reflection with this deck is to, if you like the Where's Waldo series, right? You know, you find the bonfire and contemplate the position of the bonfire and what was my question? Oh, and try to figure out why it is in that particular position. Like, why would the bonfire be on the back of the neck in the 8 of Coins? Maybe that is going to bring something up for you. Maybe it's not. So, yeah. And for sure, like Alana said, intuitive reads. And you don't need the border because you have the name within the artwork itself. So if you do have a really accurate way to cut the cards, then you could take off these ginormous borders. Yeah. So those are the first 2 that I was thinking. Hi, Joseph. I don't know if I said hello to you. Welcome. Welcome and welcome. Okay. So I'm going to go a little bit not simpler, but less busy. This is not the current edition of the Naked Heart. This, I believe, is the previous edition. So some of the cards might look a little bit different than some of you have. So this is, this is the Naked Heart. And I feel that animal-based decks are not beginner decks, mostly because there's an energy to the animal medicine. I believe that enhances the readings. So if you're familiar with the animal energy, which there is a lot in this deck, it really helps you to read the cards well. And so I feel like that's another layer that can be built into the readings. Also in this deck, we have a selection of symbols, and they are not necessarily well discussed in the guidebook. Even though I have the better guidebook, they're still not, I don't think they're adequately discussed for beginners. And here we have the old symbol for copper on the Empress card. And I love the conversation that brings into, that brings in, and the whole idea with copper being connected to the feminine and healing energy for the feminine. And it's really well done. So what I've done for this deck is I put them in order of the astrological symbols, just so we could kind of go through and have a look at what she's done here. Because in this deck, if you're interested, it's one that does follow the kind of standard format for the astrological symbols. So for the Emperor, for the Sky Father, she has the Aries symbol here. And then for the first two decans of Aries, the court card associated with that particular timing is the Queen of Wands. And so she has that here. Yeah. And then for the Sage, we have this Taurus symbol. And then the Father of Pentacles. I believe, yeah, there's the Taurus symbol there. So she's done a good job as far as including the court cards, putting the symbol on the court cards that are associated with that particular sun sign. So I think this would be a really good study deck as you were, and one that wasn't too complicated. I find a lot of the astrological decks, which I don't have. I don't think I have a couple. No, I have one. They're very, very complicated. And this one does it really simply. So this is like the next step. It's not an advanced astrological deck, but it's certainly a deck where you could start to explore the sense of astrological symbols. So we should have, there we go. So down here we have the Gemini symbol. Youth of Swords, Gemini. And if you want to discuss how this works, that's one of the topics that I'm teaching in my, or not teaching, but exploring in my Read With Me class as well too. So Chariot is Cancer, Mother of Cups is Cancer, Strength is Leo, Father of Wands is Leo. So this is a deck that you can, just start that journey with and exploring all of that. I really love this deck. Now, one of the things that I haven't done, do I have the little guidebook handy? I wonder. I do. Okay. The little guidebook. This is the fattest little guidebook so I'm just want to pull out the Hermit card. In this deck, we also have crystal associations. So if we go to the Hermit. Okay, so the Hermit Association, the Hermit Crystal Association is smoky quartz. And as far as I can tell, there is no smoky quartz in the illustration. And So one of the things I wanted to do was to do a deck pairing and try to pair it with this deck, which we're going to have a look at next. And this is the Telluric Tarot. The Telluric Tarot is by Lunaria Gold. And I kind of wish that there was at least a little crystal somewhere on these cards. Yeah, if you want to see the guidebook for this one, but this is the older, like I said, this is the not the first edition. I can't even second. This is the second edition. So for example, here, and I don't know, I just know that the third edition is a little bit thinner. So she has plants. Oh, the plants. She talks about the plants that are on there. So she talks about each of the symbols, the astrological signs, gemstone, and then she has a reflection. So yeah, so it's a great little guidebook. So the Telluric Tarot is another one that is a little bit challenging. And this is a deck that I got this year. Came out in 2020. And if you are interested in crystals, now the Lunaria Gold also has, I believe, some rune decks as well too. And also she makes runes. So she's very interested in different forms of divination. And this would make a lovely addition to the Naked Heart Tarot, because then you could start reading crystal energy along with the Naked Heart. And I think they would make excellent pairings, and use this then as an oracle instead of a tarot deck. Right now, you're looking at the 14. So these are the Kings as well as the Temperance card. So this is the Temperance card. And the way that she has drawn this, the clues for the RWS are quite vague. So here you can kind of see that this is water lily. We're below the water here and then above the water. Also, the font color does change, but it's really, really hard to see. So using this as an oracle deck would definitely make it easier to start with. So, Andrew asked me what my favorite crystal is. I don't know if he's asking me or if he's asking somebody else, but I will answer that shortly. So these are the 4 King cards here. And you can very kind of loosely feel that this might be King of Swords. And here with the beats, can you associate that with Pentacles? I can kind of feel that energy. But it's definitely not an easy deck to use. And one of the things that Lunaria said, I was watching an interview with Kasha, I believe, with Tarot Map. Kasha didn't have the deck in hand yet. But one of the things she said is she is a certified gemologist. And so she has drawn these crystals accurately as to their gem structure. So I think that's a pretty cool feature of this deck. Here is the Death card. And then here are the 4 Queen cards. Can you kind of see Queen of Fire here? She's got a lot of really rare gemstones in this deck as well too. And I don't know if I can answer Well-Tempered Claire's question, what is my favorite gemstone? What is my favorite crystal? One I have not on my table. I really, really like Septarian. I find Septarian so, actually I'll grab a couple of crystals. Why not? That's fun. I've got a pot of crystals right here. Let's see what I've got here. Because I do have some favorites in this. There we go. There we go. I have two of these. These are Septarian palm stones, and I love to put these in my pockets when I'm doing readings. There's the other one there. Are they gorgeous? It reminds me of, you know what it makes me feel? It makes me feel grounded. It makes me feel connected to the ocean floor. It feels a little bit exotic. Yeah, I have, this is another favorite one. This is Kambaba Jasper. And I have a Kambaba Jasper sphere as well too. I have several pieces of labradorite. I feel labradorite really connected to the third eye chakra. This is a seraphinite palm stone, which is another one I have a few pieces of, and I feel I sleep, or I have them near where I sleep. So seraphinite, is that what I said? Yeah, seraphinite. Yeah. And lapis. Ooh, this is a, look at this one. Isn't this gorgeous? This, I believe, is chrysocolla and, or maybe it's just chrysocolla. Or yeah, it's chrysocolla. Isn't it pretty? It's just, you know, and you can kind of tell the crystals that I like, you know, are, they're kind of intricate and layered. I really love that. My most healing crystal that I've ever worked with is sorry. Hello. Why am I drawing a blank here? Oh my goodness. Oh, malachite. Sorry. So I have a larger piece of malachite that I put on my body when I'm not feeling well. And I really feel connected to malachite for healing. So yeah, these are demortierite. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question. And I keep this large piece of carnelian here. Carnelian is it's a really nice crystal for keeping everything kind of neutral and also for recharging. So yeah, here's one of my pendulums. So yeah, so that is a long answer. Don't you just love, I love having crystals in my life. This is the labradorite card from this deck. Isn't that gorgeous? This is the Fool card. Oh, there's a couple of questions I see there. Let me go back to the questions, get my pot of treasures. So did you ask about this one? This one? Look at it. It's jasper. Kind of looks like mookaite, doesn't it? But mookaite is a jasper. It just depends where it comes from. Yeah, so that's pretty special. And Andrew says, I'd recommend Libyan gold tektite for you. Good to know. The other rock that I have that I really like to work with is, oh my goodness, it's in my altar in my bedroom. I'm sure I've showed it before. I have a couple that are just that are really, really good for the third eye, for intuition, for reading. And I keep them close to me all the time. So that's just a little pot of the many, many crystals that I have. Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about decks, not crystals, but it's fun, isn't it? Isn't it kind of fun just to mix it up? And Andrew wears Mookaite as a necklace. It's similar to Moldavite. Interesting. Yeah, so the gems, the crystals that have been collected at the meteorite crash sites are just really, really something. And there's something about Madagascar. I think one day I would love to go to Madagascar or that part of Africa and to really explore. I almost made it to the Maldives, one of my trips to India, but didn't get there. There's something about that part of the world that's so mysterious, and I would just love to go there. Okay. I need to go to my checklist to see where we're at, because I don't know. And also with the time, I want to be really mindful of the time. Okay, so we've done that one. We've done that one. Done that one. We've done that one. Okay. I want to kind of bring out a deck that I don't share very often on my channel. And I know it's a deck that a lot of people shy away from as a tarot deck, and that's the Herb Crafters. And I think this deck has some really special stuff going on in it to either use as an oracle or to begin to expand your interpretations of the tarot. And, you know, as I'm looking at this 8 of Earth, turmeric, and I just feel so much appreciation for the 8 of Earth. And I'm looking to the clothes out in the clothesline that have been dyed from the turmeric. And so you can see the fabric here in the pot getting ready to be dyed. And there's also some kind of a turmeric paste that's being made here. And I feel, I don't know, I really feel the connection to the craft. And this deck helps me to reflect on some of the deeper layers of the RWS. Oh, Andrew is Well-Tempered Claire. So, yeah. And Andrew has a really cool story about how he got his channel name. Oh, hi, Tamsin. Hello, welcome. Fairy Wren Whispers. I'm not sure if I greeted you when you came in either. Here is another. So this is a page. And you can see over here, we've got a stuffed bear. So this is the Page of Fire. And you can see her kind of chubby little hands, but she is, I like to imagine that she's sitting at her mom's table or maybe her dad's table, and she's embraced. She's got the crystal ball. She's got the cards. She still has her little stuffy over here, but she's just really kind of following in the family footsteps and the curiosity of the element of fire. And I don't know, I think it's very clever. Very, very clever. This for me is a really good deck to have out in the summer. I love having this deck out in the summer. This is one of the curanderas. So this is a king, and the curanderas are the healers. And you can see the aged skin on the hands, kind of what my hands are looking like these days. And I just find it so enchanting. I've showed you 3 fire cards, I believe. Here's another one. Can't you just taste the sweetness of the peach water? It's just so Beautiful. And it has such a different energy than most Nine of Cups cards. And so I think the secret of this deck, oh, it's okay to call Andrew Claire. Andrew's totally cool with being called Claire. I call him Claire too. So we're all good. Claire or Andrew or well-tempered Claire. I love it. I totally love it. And I also find that if you're looking for messages with a little bit of, timing, spring or summer or fall, you're also going to get that with this deck here too. This is the Chariot card. And if you look at this really closely and you see all the starlight out here, like this is a kind of a beautiful night summer sky, and I see this cedar all around the edge, and the potential, the unlimited potential in the stars. And I love the mandala that's been created here with the cedar. So beautiful. Here's another king, so another healer, Kurandera. So this is a deck I would definitely recommend for somebody who loves plants, loves healing. Maybe you make your own essential oils, you have your own herb garden, because there's a lot of messages that you can really get a good crossover. Yeah, don't you love that tattoo? It's just so, yeah, I've put this deck away, but I had it out all summer long, and I used it all summer. It just makes me appreciate the art, and it makes me want to expand my herb garden immensely. Yeah, this is one of my favorite cards. Love this card. So I definitely recommend this deck as, that kind of next step, that next level, because it offers so much. I also, if you like the Gaian Tarot, you definitely can use the two decks together. Either one as the Oracle, and then the other one as the Tarot deck. That also works really well too. If you like to work with the Gaian Tarot. The Gaian Tarot is also not a straight up kind of deck. It's has another energy. Yeah. Okay, so let's put some of these away. All right. I can't not talk about Tarot of the She. Sorry, I have to talk about Tarot of the She. Because I know a lot of people have given up on this deck. It's like, oh, it's too challenging. I can't handle this deck. It's too complicated. I don't know what to do with this deck. Well, I just want to say patience. And one of the things I said in the previous video, the beginner deck video, was stop it with trying to work with so many decks at the same time. Like, just pick one and get to know it. So, you know what I just noticed in this card? So this is the Hierophant card, right? The 5. There's an empty chair here waiting for you. Isn't that beautiful? Did you ever notice that before? When I was just getting ready today, I noticed that, and I just thought that was so Yeah, and the faces and the trees. So there's just a few things I wanted to point out with this deck that I find just absolutely mesmerizing and so full of wisdom. And this hand here, so this is to me, this looks like a solar eclipse. I'm going to talk about the eclipses also in the Wild Unknown Tarot. To me, this looks like an eclipse. And when I think of an eclipse, I think of, it's amplified energy. And we also have this kind of creepy hand here. To me, it looks like it's being removed. It could be and could be going in. I guess it kind of depends on the question. But there's almost this purification of voice, purification of air. This is the suit of air. And just like the next step is the revealed truth. I absolutely love this Chariot card. Just so beautiful. The glyph. So these are great cards for meditating with, because if you meditate with the glyph, it can take you into just a really magical liminal space. That's another thing about that this deck is really good for. This is also one of my favorite cards. I loved that the third eye is being pierced by this sword. And yeah, this could be blood rushing out of the third eye, but to me, this is just all of the crap, all of the false stuff, all of the things we no longer need is pouring out of the third eye. And I think that's a beautiful way to end the suit of air, is to have that purification of the third eye. So I'm just all over this deck. Yeah. Okay, the other thing is, if you're a moon person, you got a lot of moons in this deck. So we have, and I know it depends if you're in the southern or northern hemisphere and how the waning and waxing moons look and so forth. And I don't think you need to get too hung up on whether it's waning or waxing. Just embrace the cycle, and there may be a message in the cycle depending on the question. But generally speaking, depending on the hemisphere that you're in, I think it's really helpful if you know what a waning moon looks like and what a waxing moon looks like, because there's a lot of info in many, many decks. There's also a lot of full moons in this deck. Yeah, so mostly in this suit, in the water suit. So the potential of going into the dancer suit and looking at, mental wellness is definitely there. This is the ace. It's just beautiful. So beautiful. And something really cool here? We have the fire symbol down here. Did you ever notice that? So the ace of water, the ace of water, this fountain, this burst of water here is initiated from source. And so this deck brings in these connections between the elements. It's really, really something. This is another favorite. I mean, wow. What an embodied, right? King of Swords. So I think there's so much to be learned from this deck, and I absolutely love this deck, and I would never not be with it. And it's one of those decks that you need to work with a lot to get to know it. But once you get to know it, it's truly, truly amazing. And I so wish that Schiffer had made this a little bit smaller, because I feel really actually horrible that I have damaged this glyph. But to my knowledge, the Shi have made peace with it, and I'm okay. I haven't been sacrificed or anything. Okay. So, of course, I'm going to talk about this deck. And I've done a whole video on this deck, and I would really encourage you, if you feel intimidated by this deck in any way, this is the Wild Unknown, is to go to, no, that's not the Reiki symbol, Andrew. This is the glyph that is symbolic of the Shi. Looks very similar to the Reiki symbol, but it's not the Reiki symbol. But interesting, isn't it? Isn't it interesting? The crossover, right? So this Reiki symbol was, the Reiki symbol was visualized by somebody. And so the symbol exists in universal consciousness. It's there, and it's been tapped into not only as a symbol, a glyph that is associated with the Shi and Reiki, but I have seen it in other places as well too. So this is just, it's so fascinating to see how, you know, anyway, I just love symbology. So again, I've done a whole video on this deck, and if you're intimidated by it, go see that video. If I have time, I'll put a card up so I can direct you to it, but it's not that far back on my videos. And so in this deck, you can also, so here's one thing you can do, is to pull out all the cards with the waxing moons. This is such a good way to study and see, okay, so if all of these cards have waxing moons, what do they have in common? Do they all represent growth? Is there an aspect of growth in all of these cards? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you just want to, anyway, it's something that I like to do, is to pull out the symbols and try to study the symbols. Okay, so did I pull out the sparkly cards? Maybe I'll put that one with the sparkly cards. In this deck too, we have some solar, I'm assuming this is a solar eclipse. You know, I'm not an astrologist, I'm not a meteorologist, but to me, this looks like an eclipse. And it's really interesting because we have a few eclipses in this deck. And so I love this deck. I think that anybody can approach this deck, but I think the way into this deck is to take your time with the colors and the symbols and the lines and the animal medicine. I think it's easier if you kind of do it side by side with the Oracle deck, because a lot of the symbology is duplicated in the Oracle deck. You know, like, and then when you go to the fathers, the kings, well, what is, see it, how at the tip of the sword here, we have orange, the tip of the antlers, we have orange, the tip of the beak, we have orange, right? So we have these little clues in this deck that you're not going to get from the guidebook. You're not going to get from anywhere, but taking your time with the deck. And so I think there's a lot to be learned from this deck. Yeah. Well, Tempered Claire says it took a year to understand the Wild Unknown. Yeah. And some of them aren't, you know, not so difficult. Like this is just a magical card, don't you feel? Like this, it's truly magical. And so like you can do the same thing, right? With the lightning cards. Like pull out all the lightning cards and just kind of sit and reflect on lightning and how that might affect the energy of the card. So So I love this deck, and I think this is a deck that is definitely worthwhile your time in exploring and getting to know, because there's so much repetition of these little symbols, like everything. Like you've got why do these 3 cards? You've also got it here on the top of this card, right? These little sparkly things. And what you see might not be what somebody else sees, but then you can start to build your associations with that deck and those particular cards. And so what makes to me an intermediate deck, or the next step beyond a beginner deck, is a deck that you're really going to start to dive into the symbology in a different way. And I know that there's tons of symbology in a straight up RWS, right? You've got the colors, you've got historical symbols and references and things like that. But I'm talking about moving away from that to either something in a different direction. And I think everything I've shown you today so far kind of does that, and that's what they have in common. And so what you do is you pick a deck that intrigues you, and then you start to add layers to your expertise as a reader through different kinds of signs and symbols. I don't know. Are you guys done? Is that enough? Do you want to do a few more, or is that, I know I said 10 in the title, and that means 3 more. That means 3 more. Okay, well, there's 14 people still hanging with me, so we'll see. We'll see how we do. I want to talk about the Forlarcos Tarot by Carmen Sorrenti. This is the box. This is an indie deck. It's easily available. I believe Nancy. What's Nancy's channel name? Texas Wild Rose. Is that her channel? This deck is a deck of the dream world. And this deck was always up for listening to more. So I just love the background story of this deck, and the idea that in the Mediterranean, there were caves. There were caves in the rocks where people went for healing, and healing through dream work. There were also dream temples in these ancient lands. And there's an essay, and there's a web page where it talks about all these stories. I find it absolutely fascinating. Anyway, Nancy, sorry, Nancy, I think it's Texas Rose. Maybe Jen, you can write her channel name down if you remember it. She was talking about, she went to Carlsbad, and she went to the caves in Carlsbad. This is in the US. And she took this deck with her into the caves, and she had some amazing experiences with these cards in the caves in Carlsbad. So I thought that was the coolest story. So this is a great deck for dream work. It's a great deck for really starting to explore your subconscious. And all of the aces are grayscale. And what happens in the minor arcana is we have a growth of color, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're starting to get more color, 7 more color, 8, 9, and 10. And if you look at this, that we have here the ace and the 10. And so we have this really interesting connection. And then we go to the court cards, and we have like a second entrance into the energy of the suit. So the Knights are the first court card. They're also black and white, and they're called the Trails. So like this is, if you were going to do dream work, it would be really interesting to go into your meditation or go into your journey with either the Trail card or with the Ace card, because it's the Trails who lead you into this healing work. And so this is the suit of Pentacles, the suit of Spirals that I'm showing you here. And you can see that the court cards are fully colored, as are the major arcana. So it's just a fascinating deck. Here's one. I'll just show you one other suit. And I think this is my favorite suit in the deck. This is the suit of Wings, the suit of Air. And you'll see that the aces, I believe, am I right? Yeah. All of the aces are blindfolded. So there's a lot to reflect on here. So in the suit of Wings, and these look like, don't these look like dreams, right? All the crazy stuff that happens in your dreams. Maybe you don't get the letters and the words, but you get all these random images. It is trimmed. Jen made me do it, and I'm so glad that I did. So this is the suit of Wings. And I really like this deck. Gosh, I had it out for months and months working with it. And here's the Trail for this suit. There's the Queen, sorry, the Dreamer, so the Page. So it goes Trail, Dreamer, Queen, and King. So yeah, so that's a Philosophers Tarot, and I definitely think it's you know, and I edged it in rose gold. If you're just looking for something a little bit different, and you want to step away from your first deck or your second deck, it's a lovely deck to work with. Now, my other suggestion for those who want to start to explore tarot at another level, this is just an example of a deck. I know the Fairy Tale Tarot is out of print. I have the Spanish version. There's quite a few fairy tale type decks out there, decks that are that weave in mythology or weave in fairy tales. I'm using this one as an example of my point, but I don't think at a beginner level this is where you want to start, because you're weaving in, because there's too many layers. But when you're ready to add a second layer, one of a story deck or a fairy tale deck is just it's a beautiful way to start to deepen your experience with the tarot. And here we have the Jabberwocky as the devil. And we can look to, because within Through the Looking Glass and the Alice stories, we have stories within stories. We also have Charles Dodson himself within the story as the dodo bird. And we have the metaphor of the chessboard in Through the Looking Glass. And so any of the decks that have stories within stories, I think are another kind of step and another way to go. And I did 2 videos on Dame Darcy's Queen Alice deck if you're interested in how I work with this kind of deck. But I highly recommend working with at least one fairy tale deck or one Alice, or I'm just trying to think of another one besides Alice that would be based on a story. Do you know another deck that's based on just a single story? something that carries a lot of metaphor and symbology and so forth. I think it's a great way to start to understand what's going on. Now, the other thing too, if you're not familiar with the Alice story, that's a whole other can of worms. And so what I did in my 2 videos on the Dame Darcy Queen Alice Tarot was I talked about the connections between the Alice stories and how I felt that those stories were interpreted in the deck. If you have the Bubba Studios deck, which this one is, the Bubba Studios Alice deck, and you have the extra guidebook, in the back of the guidebook, it goes through and does exactly what I did in those 2 videos for Dame Darcy's deck. So it goes through and it puts the cards in the order that they come out in the story. And there's a few of the cards that have the same scene as Dame Darcy's deck. I think one of them is the Page of Swords. Yes. So this is such a beautiful interpretation of the Page of Swords. So this is the slaying of the Jabberwocky. And I'm just going to talk about this because I think this is really deep and I love it. So the Jabberwocky is a poem, right? It's a poem in Alice in Wonderland. And it's a poem that's full of made up words and difficult, challenging words, difficult to pronounce because they're not from the English language. They are nonsense words created by Lewis Carroll. And so what does it mean to slay your Jabberwocky? What does it mean to slay a difficult poem? What does it mean to wrap your mouth, your tongue around words and to articulate well or to interpret words well or to begin to understand that? And I think for that to be here at the Page of Swords is so clever. So, so clever. This level of cleverness reminds me of the Hippocampus card in the Slow Tarot. That is another extremely clever card. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in the Slow Tarot for the Knight of Cups, the Knight is riding a hippocampus. And the that's a whole other thing, but yeah, super, super clever. I love the cleverness of this. It's, yeah. Alrighty. So that's 9. I'll do one more. I have way more than 10 on my table, but I'll do one more. This is Bubba Studios Alice, and I have 2 Alice decks in my collection. 2. I don't have the little tiny one in a tin. And I'm sure you all have this deck. And I'm kind of repeating myself. What I'm saying here. I think maybe this is just my approach to challenging decks. Because they're not ever nonsense. And when you find a deck that you find challenging and you don't know what to do with it, you just need to take it apart. You just need to take it apart and start to find the connections. Start to weave the web of the things that you find overwhelming. And so in approaching the Marielle, one of the ways to do it, and this is exactly how it is done in the guidebook, is to take, for example, take all of the 7s and to start to understand what the 7s are about. Because here in the 7 of Cups and the 7 of Wands, we have two of the dogs from the Chariot card. And in the 7 of Pentacles, we have another representation. We have a a physical, concrete representation of the Chariot as mountains. And so perhaps what I'm saying is, and I guess for me, this is my impatience. So in many of the Facebook chat groups, the same questions get asked over and over and over again. And I know different people are coming into the chat at different times, and people on their journey at a different time. But I think the big message for anybody who's struggling with a particular card or with a particular deck is just to slow down. Slow down. Just take out the sevens, take out the Chariot, and go for a walk. Keep them out. Study the sevens. Maybe get the sevens from the deck that you're familiar with and start looking at the sevens and learn the sevens. And then you can go to all of the mythology that is included in this deck. And if you start to explore the myths, you know, you don't have to digest all the myths at a time. And just because you crack open the Marielle doesn't mean you have to start reading with it. You just start appreciating the pieces. And so appreciate the pieces. And maybe if you just study the sevens of the Marielle, somehow that will trickle into your readings with the decks that you are more comfortable with. It's about approach. And so this video is not about the meanings of the Marielle or the meanings of any of these decks. It's about what is an intermediate deck and how do I approach. I mean, this card here it's just so amazing to kind of look at this and reflect on how, you know, we all come from source. And we may go our separate ways for a period of time, but we're all going to end up back in the same pool at the bottom. And if you just slow down, it's not rocket science. And, you know, maybe there's a myth associated with this particular painting. I don't remember in the guidebook. But it's just a matter of, you know, take a big breath and then go for it. Hello, and I love this card. You know, and there's a couple of different, this reminds me of a card in this deck. There's a child. Anyway, in the Marielle, the thing I like about this is, well, that tower on the other side of the gate, that tower through the gate is as confining as perhaps the cage that you are in. Are you inside the gate or are you outside the gate? Is the gate actually locked or is the gate open? And I know these are a couple of the easier cards in this deck. Some of them are fused with mythology and they take a little more time, but the whole deck isn't like that. And so you could start with one of the myths and then work with, you know, a couple of the less challenging cards. Oh my goodness. Hello, where are you? It's going to be the last card. There it is. This card. You know, the grass is greener on the other side of the gate, but is it? And anyway, just kind of reminded me of that. And then, you know, sometimes my mind goes crazy. Like when I saw this card, I'm sure I've shared this before on my channel. This reminds me of a vagina. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. But that's what this reminds me of. And every time I see this card, I think of creation. I think of the potential. I think of, I don't know, and this deck has so much amazing energy in it, and I think it's so worthwhile taking your time to get to know. I love the Temperance card in this deck as well too. Alana's laughing, probably at my last comment. So yeah, you know, and there is no, we looked at an amazing King of Swords in another deck, but this is so incredible. I just feel privileged as a tarot reader to have this many resources available to me to expand my, if you don't have this deck, I'll show you the one that, Well-Tempered. This is another huge, big favorite card in this deck. There's lots of nudity in this deck as well too, if that's an issue for you. This is not the second edition. This is the first edition. Well, you can tell from the borders. The new deck has does not have borders, and I have trimmed this one. Oh, this is the deck that Well-Tempered Claire was talking. That not the deck, the card that Well-Tempered Claire was talking about. And so we have this brilliant painting here of the tiger emerging through the water. You'll also find in the Marielle, so the Emperor has a green eye. There's green eyes hidden throughout the Marielle. And so that's another thing you could do, is pull out all the cards with the green eyes and to start to reflect on that, because those green eyes have a story to tell. Yeah, it's quite the card. So, you know, people say the weirdest things about cards and decks, and sometimes you might find it offensive, and sometimes it might be something. And I'm not going to say it out loud, but this is a card that a lot of people make fun of on that say nasty things about this card, and I just think it's really interesting. So yeah. So yeah, so that's 10 decks, and I'm going to stop there because you know me, I can go on and on and on and on. So let me know if you have any questions about these 10 decks. And I guess the next question is, what's the difference between an intermediate deck and an advanced deck? And I don't really think that was my intention, was to do beginner, intermediate, and advanced. I think once you've got a basic understanding of the tarot, then you can go in any direction that you want to go. And you can start with patience and time to take apart and to study any deck, really. But these are 10 excellent decks to challenge you and to start to expand your ability to read, for sure. And they're all, I believe they're all available except for the Bubba Studios Alice, but there are other Alice decks available to work with. And most of the Alice decks are quite good. So yeah. Yeah, so those are a few of my thoughts for this evening, and I want to thank you all for hanging out with me. Yes, and so Andrew says, are you going to do an advanced deck video? That is another question. I do have the Lonely Dreamer. Yes, the Lonely Dreamer. So maybe we should do a video and talk about art decks, because I have also the beautiful Rebellion Tarot. And Those are the two that I can think of off the top of my head. And I really place those decks more in a, you know what I might do? Yes, I could do that. But just in a nutshell, what I would consider an advanced deck to be is one that is entirely intuitive. You can't really go out and pick out all the waning moons. You can't really go and find all the lightning and draw symbols. So I would consider an advanced deck to be one that is completely intuitive. So that might be one of the art decks like the Lonely Dreamer or the Beautiful Rebellion. Also the Marielle. I would put the Marielle there because it's about feeling. And yes, there are a few cards that follow a system, or you could connect loosely to a system that you're familiar with, but not a lot. Like maybe in the whole deck, there's 5. So yeah, I don't know if I will do an advanced deck video, but it's something like that I could think of that I could contemplate anyway, for sure. So I have the first edition of The Lonely Dreamer, and I know it's on Kickstarter now, and so the second edition will be available soon. Oh, you can all find the patience for sure. So yeah, so maybe I will. Maybe I will, because that's how I read, right? I read in a very integrated way. The Primordial Tarot would be advanced for me. So that is a deck that I will definitely have my hands on soonish. And, you know, maybe the Philosophers Tarot fits more into advanced than intermediate, but at least it has kind of a system, right? So it has the aces are all gray, the knights are all gray, and there's a progression of color as you go through the minors. So in a way, but it's kind of on the border of intermediate and advanced. So yeah, so maybe I will. There's a list. There's a list of videos that I want to make, and I will eventually do that. Yeah. So thanks for hanging out with me, and enjoy the rest of your day, whatever time of day it is for you, and be kind to one another. Stay well. Namaste.